So this is a rudimentary view of the path of EHS data. But what are the issues within it? So we talk about data sources. The big issues here are fairly obvious, right? You're going to have potentially language issues. If you're a global company like Bayer, and I know Dan will get into this, you may be collecting data from people that speak very different languages, but you need to normalize that and be able to view it potentially in one language to really review and gain insights and measure things, et cetera. You could be getting data that's all different units of measurement. So, maybe you're getting kilometer data in one country and mile data in another, for example. You're using different units on your air emissions. There could be so many different units coming in that, again, you need to normalize. Different file types, of course. You could be receiving an Excel from this person or this entity. It's a PDF over here. It's coming in as an XML file here. This is straight through an API gateway. You're tons of different file types feeding information into your software. Qualitative versus quantitative data, of course, some of it's going to be numbers, some of it's going to be free text. For example, in an incident report, you will have a date, you'll have a free text, you'll have a picture, you may have a number, you may have select the risk ranking or the severity of the incident. So there's all sorts of types of data. And of course, one of the biggest issues is variations in data quality. A common pain point, not just in EHS software, but EHS in general, is not collecting data that is directly comparable because the quality varies so much. One person may take the time to really fill out an incident report, another person may kind of skim through it and fill out just the bare minimum. Some data may be filled out correctly, some may be doing error emissions. If you're relying on manual entry, someone put in an extra zero, and that's going to really trip up the numbers, lead to something that looks like it's out of place even though it's not. You need to have measures in place to ensure data quality because, of course, bad data in will lead to bad data out. But let's look at problems with the EHS management software itself too, or potential issues, I should say. You need to make sure that the software has the ability to manipulate data to maximize its context. First and foremost, context. Data coming in without context is just data. It's kind of white noise in a sense. So you need to understand why the data is there, the stakeholder that it's meant to help out, whether it be you, the EHS professional, the board, OSHA, et cetera, and make sure that that data is fit for purpose. You need to make sure that software has the ability to manipulate data to maximize its utility. So is that data going to be actually valuable to us, or are we just collecting kind of nonsense data that basically adds time to the job when we don't really need it? You want to make sure EHS software is able to keep that data aligned. You want to make sure EHS software can maximize the shareability of data. So if you have data coming in and you maximize its context and maximize its utility and it's all aligned, but it stays within the software, it's not being shared to the proper entity, that's not good. So you need to make sure your software facilitates data out as well as it facilitates data in. And of course, if you're doing all this right, you should be able to maximize the software's value in general. This will allow you to derive the maximum value of the software, which is something I'll touch on later in the presentation today. But the workflow is not actually as simple as that. You need to remember that data can go into the software, but then it can sometimes leave the software and come right back. So you could be taking incident data that comes into your EHS management software and sending that to an external software to manipulate it or analyze it. So a very common use case here is going to be data that resides in your EHS software platform that is then sent out to a data lake where you can use your internal BI tools, Power BI, Tableau, et cetera, to view that data alongside other sources of data and draw better conclusions for what's going on in your organization and try to add more context. You can, of course, solve the language problem by maybe using a translation engine that data goes from your software to the translation engine back to the EHS management software where you can view it. Validation tools, it could be going to a facilities management software, for example, on tasking and maintenance, et cetera. And that data can go right to that external data management software or external data management tool, and then into the EHS management software. It can go back and forth between them. So it's not just a straight line. Data moves around a lot. And I think that's the big takeaway from these slides that I want to show is that data moves around a lot. So how can you make sure you're doing this in the most effective, most efficient way to accomplish the goals that you set for your EHS software and your EHS program as a whole? Okay, and then of course it can go to the endpoint use case from that external data management provider. That would be an example of looking at the analysis from the BI tool, sending that report directly to the board, who can view holistic business performance, EHS, ESG, amongst other things, maybe next to production or sales numbers.